I discovered my best friend scammed my ex and me, faked illness, stole money, then tried a wedding only to face justice later. Once upon a time, I, almost 49 years old and female, had an incredibly close friend, Mindy. In fact, she was more than just a friend. She was like a sister to me. We became friends in elementary school. She actively sought my friendship, always wanting to sit by me and engage in conversation. Over the years, we spent a lot of time at each other's homes, but by the time we turned 19, my house became our primary gathering spot due to her serious family issues. My parents informally took her in, showing compassion for her circumstances. I consistently tried to make her feel included and avoided flaunting expensive items she could not afford, such as extravagant shows or fashionable clothes that she admired but couldn't wear. On other occasions, I simply gave her some of my old clothes. She was kind, outspoken, and made me feel as though I had the most devoted friend in the world. As the years passed, I graduated from college and secured a good job. Meanwhile, Mindy's situation improved. She had her own apartment and a reliable full-time job. By this point, we had formed a group of friends, young professionals, all striving to find our way. I remember that period of my life as bittersweet. We often reminisced about our college experiences, and since this was in the 90s, social media and texting did not exist. To connect, we had to exchange phone numbers or email addresses. Now, it is considerably easier. Sharing our memories bound us together as we wondered about the lives of friends we might never encounter again. Gatherings took place in my apartment, which I adored. It was spacious but still partially empty since I was careful not to overspend on decor. During that time, Mindy began to appear unwell and not herself. I grew increasingly concerned and cared about her deeply. She had always been there for me, particularly when my fiancé abruptly ended our relationship without explanation. Nowadays, we call that ghosting. He was the first man I had ever truly loved. I had hoped he would reciprocate my feelings, though I accepted him for who he was. There were phases where he seemed cold, leaving me wanting more, but I convinced myself I could endure it. Essentially, I was settling for crumbs of affection. He was charming, successful, and protective, so when he proposed, I felt ecstatic and chose to ignore the negatives. I had saved a significant amount for our wedding, and he did the same in a separate account. Everything fell apart when, unexpectedly, he broke off the engagement, stating he did not want to marry me and had no feelings for me. He allowed me to keep the money from our joint account, along with some of his belongings at my apartment, exercise equipment, clothing, practically everything. This shattered my heart. I felt as if he detested me and desperately sought to sever all ties. No invitations had been sent, so ending the engagement was not as difficult as it could have been. Mindy was there to support me, listening to my pain, enduring my rants, and comforting me through endless crying spells. I lost so much weight that I felt ashamed to be seen outside. She was dating a man named George, who graciously let me stay at their place whenever I was overwhelmed by sadness and anguish. They both cut ties with my ex. I had made countless life-changing decisions for him, only to be left in the dark. Mindy and George sat me down and revealed that my ex was seeing someone else. I can't forget the shock and heartbreak that overwhelmed me. My heart raced, and I rushed to the restroom as the distress caused me to vomit. I could not comprehend why my ex had treated me so poorly. Those Christmases were unbearable. I would sit in my living room, staring blankly at the wall. Mindy and George helped me set up a stylish 90s-themed Christmas tree to lift my spirits, only white lights, a few gold ornaments, and natural pine. I was in such a dark place that the tree remained up until the following spring. By summer, Mindy delivered devastating news. She was terminally ill. I felt furious. She did not deserve this. Her diagnosis was dreadful, so severe that George proposed sooner than he intended, wanting to make the most of their time together. She had always dreamed of a grand wedding. It was her passion. When we were teenagers, we would visit bridal shops and try on countless dresses. Her dream wedding was now unattainable. Her family would not contribute. She had left her home under terrible circumstances, and George could not afford the expenses alone. He had just graduated from medical school and was buried in debt. I made the decision to pay for her wedding. Although it would be a small ceremony, I ensured that the decorations and her dress were as enchanting as she had always envisioned. I still had the funds I had saved for my own wedding. As financially risky or foolish as it might have seemed at the time, I was certain those last days with Mindy would hold immeasurable value once she was gone. Her illness caused me to realize there are far worse things in life than being unceremoniously dumped by an ex. I threw myself into planning. I felt a sense of happiness and optimism as Mindy could attend her chemotherapy sessions independently without becoming too ill. She also appeared much better than many other patients. Our group of friends rallied around her as well. There was never a day without someone dropping off groceries or assisting with a utility bill, as she was no longer working. Initially, I offered to help her secure a better health insurance plan, but she declined. Pay attention to this point for later discussion. So, I chose not to intrude and focused on giving her the fairy tale wedding she desired, or as closely as I could manage. She chose a lovely rented dress and tiara. The florist was hired to create an indoor garden that aligned with her taste. The venue would be my apartment. A baker was chosen to craft a 6-tier wedding cake. There would be 35 guests, along with tables, an aisle, and a musician to provide live music. We couldn't go for the loud disc jockey option. Now, returning to the issue of insurance. My first job was as a junior sales executive for a health insurance company. There was a legal dispute with another insurer, and I was summoned by the court to serve as a witness. As I was being cleared to enter the building, I saw my ex. My stomach churned. I immediately thought, courtroom wedding. By the time I reached the elevator, he had disappeared. That experience turned my day upside down. I relived the lack of closure all over again. I just couldn't let it go. I reached out to a good friend who was interning at the courthouse. She assisted me by checking any legal records related to my ex. No courthouse wedding, which relieved me, even though it may sound trivial. But there was a fraud claim, and he was the plaintiff. I didn't think much of it, but it struck me as odd. He was highly intelligent, and it seemed out of character for him to be taken advantage of financially. I still wanted to help Mindy, and attempted to set her up with a reliable health insurance plan. I knew it would be challenging, as companies treated terminal patients as financial liabilities. I pleaded with my former boss, who searched her name, but she wasn't listed in the company database. Perhaps she was using a different insurer, but that was peculiar because she had explicitly informed me of her insurance provider. I felt guilty for snooping. Things were normal for about a month until my friend at the courthouse shared some astonishing news. The defendant in my ex's lawsuit was my closest friend, Mindy. She asked if I knew anything about it, but I had no idea. She disclosed that the case had become popular gossip among the court clerks as my ex had fallen victim to a complex scam. As it turned out, Mindy and my ex had been having a secret affair for an entire year, right under George's nose and mine. She had not actually been out of work. She had been terminated for embezzlement and larceny, theft from her employer. I was aware that she had frequently changed apartments, but I assumed it was an attempt to save on rent as she searched for more affordable options. She kept moving around the same city. Initially, she extracted money from my ex for a supposed investment and used her former employer's reputation as a lure. The details were vague. Then, she convinced him to assist with medical expenses and swindled him out of nearly $20,000. Her illness was fabricated. I avoided her for a week and hired a private investigator to uncover as much information as possible, even though I had little hope considering their affair was over. The investigator managed to provide me with some closure. His name was listed on her lease for a small studio apartment. Everyone in that building believed they were a couple. It was their secret hideaway located 2 hours away. I had never suspected anything. Apparently, he had lied about his actual work hours. He had also helped cover her car payment at least 6 times over the course of a year. She treated my ex as her financial supporter. She had witnessed me cry, throw up, curl up in my bed, and had been the one to break the news that he had someone else her. My ex appeared bitter that she had chosen to be with George. It was simple math. My ex was quite successful, but George, while not wealthy yet, was becoming a physician and was on the brink of starting a small practice with a possible partner. Mindy abandoned her life, taking advantage of others in the process. Apparently, my ex figured out that she had been deceiving him about her condition. The disgust, pain, and disappointment hit me hard, but somehow I had poured so much of myself into helping her that I felt numb to any emotional turmoil. I went directly to all the wedding vendors and canceled everything before it was too late to recover my money. I withdrew funds from her wedding plans. No cake, no dress, and no veil. I sat down with George one Friday afternoon and presented him with all the evidence I had gathered. He cried, but ultimately he felt an immense sense of relief. Yes, he loved her, but he admitted to feeling pressured to marry. He acknowledged multiple red flags. She always attended her medical appointments alone and became annoyed if he asked too many questions. She had shown him some test results that seemed meticulously designed, but knowing what he did now, he suspected they could be falsified. He confirmed this in a clever way, having his former nurse roommate run her name through the records at the office where she claimed to be treated. It was a logical move, as a small town at that time had only one oncologist. We also speculated that she might have been pursuing a new affair, as she frequently spent weekends with her all-girls church camping group. She claimed that it was her sanctuary and had significantly helped her. George and I came to grips with the fact that we had both been deceived and manipulated by the same individual. Personally, I felt as though I had lost my innocence. Now, I understood why she wanted to keep her wedding plans largely hidden. Public exposure could have potentially blown her cover in one way or another. George and I decided to do what was right. I financed a video tribute to my loyal friend and submitted it to the local news as a heartwarming story of love and healing. I made sure to feature her in George's apartment complex intentionally so that people attempting to serve her court papers could locate her. I had no desire to see her again and made excuses to avoid her, but George struggled to disguise his emotions once she returned from her camping trip. It was a torturous week. The news segment had not released our positive spin yet, and we were anxiously awaiting developments. It all exploded on Tuesday morning. The news station exuberantly showcased our story with a montage and extensive information about her, highlighting how she was about to marry and had almost overcome cancer. A flood of ill-mannered detractors emerged out of nowhere. It turned out this was not her first illness story. I never imagined someone so close to me could lead such a duplicitous life. My ex went straight to the news station and was interviewed. It was a pitiful sight. He poured out his heart, expressing how deeply in love he had been and how she had merely used him. By this point, he seemingly no longer cared if our friends and families discovered the truth behind his actions. George confronted her with all the information. She denied everything, then claimed it was just a lapse in judgment. She moved out with minimal drama. It took George over a decade to forgive himself for allowing someone to make him feel so foolish both personally and professionally. Mindy left me several voicemails full of excuses. I answered her call only once and informed her that I had canceled and demolished her wedding plans and that it was I who had informed George about the truth. I spoke with a calm demeanor, telling her not to contact me again unless she was ready to face the consequences for her illegal actions. I broke down in tears immediately after hanging up. The entire situation felt surreal. George and I gradually returned to normalcy, although it required time. He dated a few women here and there but was not ready for a serious relationship. I, on the other hand, became emotionally withdrawn. She managed to evade jail time, though I am uncertain how, even as our mutual friends filed minor claims for the money they had invested in her as she maintained her charade. Eventually, I used the wedding funds to partner with George, and we opened a small clinic, arguably my best decision ever. Over the years, George and I solidified our friendship and grew closer. We got married a few years ago and now share a happy family. Fun fact, I received a Facebook message from Mindy 7 years ago. She began sweetly but quickly shifted to blame me, accusing me of stealing her man and her life. I blocked her. Fun fact too, I encountered my ex in 2001. He apologized profusely. I accepted his apology and told him everything worked out as I now had a life with someone who truly deserved me. At that time, George and I had just begun dating. Fun fact, Mindy managed to evade criminal charges for her actions back then, but was later prosecuted for setting up a crowdfunding campaign for a fraudulent cause and stealing from an elderly person. Edit thanks to everyone who has shown such love and support. I was unaware this would generate so much attention. To the kind individual who reached out, concerned about my emotional state, thank you, but I'm not. This took place a long time ago, before 1997. Mindy has become a common joke between my husband and me. Every time we do something petty to each other, we reference her name. For instance, if he eats my ice cream or I forget to refuel the car, we say, "Really, Mindy?" Or when we catch someone in a lie. It's all good. I hope Her Highness doesn't mind us using her name in jest if she ever finds out.